Uh, this is our this event is for commemoration of Halabja, and today we are having Leila Ghasempor. She is a Kurdish performance artist whose work draws from her experiences growing up amid the Iran-Iraq war when her family was displaced. She makes collective performances reference universal and culturally specific symbols of human pain, loss, and displacement. Leila's practice is more educational. Each of her projects draws attention to traumatic history of marginalized people or focuses on a specific issue that she confronts in society, no matter where they are happening. She has been recognized, her work has been recognized with many scholarships and in many schools. Without any further ado, I would like her to take over the call and present her project to us. Thank you so much, Leila, for joining us. Please go ahead and take over the call.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ridwan, for introduction. And I really appreciate Kurdish Cultural Center of Illinois to letting me present this project. So hi, everybody. Welcome to today's talk, The Symphony of Loss. I believe that life is a medium form of art, but art is a performance of practicing life's discipline. Art is a practice of learning to think, and thinking is a discipline of art practice in life. Today, I'm going to talk about some of my projects from the Symphony of Loss series, which are around Halabja, Anfal genocide, and displacement. So let's get started. So here is the first project, which is called Trace and Truce. It's about Halabja chemical bombardment, which in Kurdish we kind of call it Kimya Barani. And it happened on March 16, 1988. Halabja is placed in northeast of Baghdad and Iran border. And it was bombarded through chemical bombardment that was used a combination of nerve agents, including tabun, sarin, and mustard gas. Trace and Truce is a performance photography installation that which is audience engaging and requires audience interaction. So in order to experience the work, audience should interact with the work. And actually the original photographs of this project have been taken by Iranian photographer Ahmad Nataqi in 1988, but I have recontextualized this photograph to create works that audience can interact with and narrow down the distance of traumatic events with the audience versus just watching a photograph and walk away. And this project involved a physical presence and, as I mentioned, interaction. Halabja chemical bombardment killed 5,000 of my fellow Kurdish people and over 10,000 got injured, but gradually died from chemical side effects. Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq's time, used a combination of chemicals and nerve agents. As I mentioned, these chemicals include tabun, sarin, and mustard gas. Tabun has a faint fruity odor. The odor may not be noticeable enough to give people enough warning that is near them. They may tire and no longer be able to sustain breathing function. Both sarin and tabun are heavier than air and sink especially to the lower side of the ground. Tabun is a man-made chemical warfare agent, which is classified as a nerve agent. Nerve agents are the most toxic and rapidly acting of the known chemical warfare agents. They are actually similar to insecticide, which are the insect killing chemicals that they work harmfully and affect a lot of side effects for the victims. Tabun is a material which is very clear and colorless, and it's very liquid depending on the purity of the chemical, and it's tasteless and has a very fruity odor. Tabun can easily vapor on the ground, and it was actually in the past developed by a company in Germany in 1936. After the Halabja bombardment, actually the victims are suffering from a lot of side effects, including respiratory problems, eye blindness, and birth defects, which are all cases that are still happening. Also, based on my research on the material and the radiation of the chemical, this radiation are still present in Halabja, and that's why most of the children suffer from the cancer due to this radiation. So let's go to the next project. This project is called The Smell of an Apple. This is another work which I created for Halabja bombardment. As I was talking to some of my fellow Kurds from Iraq, they told me they heard from the rest over of the family who survived Halabja that upon bombardment, they smelled very freshy fruit, apple smell around the area. So it just made me to search more. And as I explained about tabun, sarin, and mustard gas chemicals, it was because of the freshly fruity smells that those chemicals have. And as I mentioned, they are not noticeable easily as far as they just take out the breathing of their victims. So it just made me to try to embody the pain of not being able to breathe or have difficulty with breathing and having the blur vision, and embody all of these side effects through my body by placing an apple over my eye while I have bent my neck to control the balance of apple. While I'm in front of a screen and try to keep the balance of the apple and orient my way in the space, it created this blur vision also, which is kind of another side effect of the chemical that I mentioned. And it makes it difficult for you to find the way you have been placed in what area you are in front of a screen. And every second you see the glance of changing of the real archive of Halabja's original documentation photographs behind the screen. And it was happened during the COVID. So I tried my best to still keep the connection with the audience to bring more attention about Halabja. The next project is called The Children of Sky. The Children of the Sky is a collective performance that is experienced by each member of performers that cooperated to create this work. This performance reflects on the displacement of immigration and the loss of children as they mostly cross the ocean, starting from Turkey. The act of throwing children's clothes in the sky is displacement, explosion, fragmented body, and loss, which all are shown through the way artists and performers throw them in the sky, and it also shows the disability of the artists and performers. This is an attempt to reach, help, and try to understand as far as your hands or ability goes, to remind this loss of the children who have crossed the sea with their family in order to survive. Also, upon throwing the clothes in the sky, most of the performers panicked as the clothes ended up on the ground or the sea, and it made them to be more aware of the loss, even though it was a small loss for them in that moment to lose a children close, but hopefully it created with creating the situation that makes them to be aware of that loss, it kind of make them to understand and get close to such events when people are experiencing loss, especially for children, as I said, who pass by the sea for immigration. So this is the second category of the works which are around Anfal, and they are more collective. And I'm gonna explain why I am more interested into collectivity and collecting people to be a collective voice for such projects. I believe we are gathered for humanity, no matter which kind of what kind of profession we are doing. As Edward Said says, the desire to be moved not by profit or reward, but by love for an unquenchable interest in the larger picture, in making connections across lines and barriers, in refusing to be tied down to a specialty, in caring for ideas and values despite the restrictions of a profession. Throughout creating these collective projects, I believe what these collective performers get together to transform their thinking, to question why we should get together for a cause, who benefits from this, and how it will connect with our human essence. One can also ask the most important question: how to be moved or inspired. As Edward Said well said it, it is the desire to be moved by love, a love that is unextinguished. Instead of always waiting to get reward or profit, to a step forward for understanding a fellow human's pain, and most of all, understanding your human essence. So with all that said, I'm gonna start talking about the first project from the Symphony of Lhasa 1, which, as I mentioned, they are about Anfal genocide. Anfal genocide was 8 phases of Kurdish bombardment and genocide that happened between February 23rd and September 6, 1988. And this work, as I mentioned, is called the Symphony of Lhasa 1, is an audience engaging project that talks about the trauma of the Anfal genocide during Saddam Hussein's persecution of the Kurds, which culminated in the Anfal military campaign of 1988. Up to 182,000 people died and more than 4,000 villages were destroyed. According to Kurdistan Regional Government, Human Rights Watch reported in its 1993 comprehensive report on Anfal in Iraq that at least 5,000 and possibly as many as 100,000 Kurds are estimated to have been killed at the hands of Ba'athi regime. However, since then, several sources have stated that as many as 182,000 or even more people were killed in the operation of this genocide. Throughout the Kurdish genocide Anfal, men and boys of battle age were rounded up and disappeared in masses. Most of these men and boys were captured, transported to mass graves, and shot in mass executions. Of the total victims of Anfal, an estimated 70% were men, approximately aged 15 to 50. Excuse me. So this performance installation work that I created, as you can see in the left down photograph, it's a chain of mountain, which recalls the Kurdish proverb, no friends but the mountains. Audience, in order to experience the work, they have to go through this physical pain and bend their body to go underneath this beautiful sheet of the flower that they are confronting. So through this bending, going through this physical pain, they discover underneath the sheet of this mountain chain. As you can see on the top right, they confront the photographs of victims, and also the name of every single part of the family of the Anfal, which are not identified by a personal name, but also with a general relationship, like my mother is number 1, my son is number 100, my father is number 800, until the total number of the Anfal victims, which are 180,000 victims. Sorry, I suffer from asthma. Sorry, I just got some coughing. So here is the second project, the Symphony of Loss, from the Symphony of Loss series, which is called the Symphony of Loss 2. As I mentioned in the second previous project, the Symphony of Loss 1, I made the name of victims to be more general and not applied by a specific numbers of the name. During creating this, I'm working on the Symphony of Loss, which are around Anfal genocide. I noticed as I dig more and more to communicate with the families of the victims, because I wanted to get more information to know how much name of these victims we have, because I was criticized through fellow artists how we can believe such a trauma and genocide happened. You don't have names on hand. And it was a good question for me to kind of talk the conversation more, whether we need the name of every single of the victims to prove to people such a genocide happened. Do we have all the name for the Holocaust genocide? So it just makes me to think, in the lack of information and the documentation of that trauma, how you can bring it forward and narrow down the distance of this trauma between the people who are not from this traumatic event, and make it more close to them so that they can understand the people who gone through this trauma. So as you can see from the right photograph, this is a photograph that I got through my connection with Ghasempor from Anfal monument in Iraq, and these are the 830 people which are buried, as you can see by the numbers, and you don't have name for them. And I decided how I can bring the dignity of these victims and question the human essence all these years, through a collective voice. Because, you know, Kurdish people, when they are dancing, they are holding hands, they are in group. When they are mourning, again, they are in group. So that's also where the collective voice of my works come from. So I decided for this work, the Symphony of Loss to create a project which is more collective, and it's every man and women are welcome to join to collaborate for creating such a collective voice. And as you can see in the photo, they are through this market that I have made. This is Agora, a sculpture in Chicago, which Magdalena Abakovic's a Polish sculptor had made. So performers will walk on this sculpture through every single of this figure. You can see they are headless and handless. So performers would carry this flower, which are symbolizing every single of the victims of Anfal, and they would read the name and the relationship of the victims, get so close to their relative. As I mentioned in the Symphony of Loss 1, the sentences would be like this: my baby is number 1, my mother is number 50, my brother is number 90. So the performers will repeat this relationship and get more and more closer to this traumatic event during 1 hours of walking and carrying the flower through this sculpture in their own mother tongue. So every person who comes, they are welcome, and we encourage them to read this relationship of the victims in their own language. Yeah, so, and for this work, I'm considering 2 dates: the Saturday, April 23rd, and Sunday, April 24th. So whoever were willing to be interested to devote and help with this project, you are welcome to contact us on the WhatsApp through Kurdish Cultural Center, and or just emailing me saying I'm interested. So I will make a forum and come up with a date that most of the people are available in among these 2 dates. So, and then we get together to do a rehearse and then finalize the work, which, as I said, it involves 1 hour participation through the work in Agora sculpture in Grand Park in Chicago. Right now, in order to show you more other collective projects that I have done, again, in the same sculpture park, through this Agora's sculpture that I'm mostly interested. Some of you might know why this place, why again and again, because I was looking at the war monuments, and I believe most of the monuments I came across, they are admiring the heroism, and I'm mostly into the way that the monuments or place that makes us really to think, because as far as we create war monuments and admire the heroes, the war will be continued, versus some places that really think us more about the humanity and the way we want to further our world. So this is another project which I created. It's called How to Become a Flower. In How to Become a Flower, performers hold the flower. Their body is not moving, but their viewpoints are limited to the sky and flower. Once in a while, the gravity will make them move a little, but they do not have any sense of what's happening on the earth. They are suspended between the earth and the sky through a flower. It controls their gestures and make them aware of their vulnerability, incompetency, and inabilities. Also, the neck tension and saliva in the performer's mouth remind them how their lives depend on one breath. Through performing in these places, we are witnessing not only the fragility of a human life in a flower gesture that is embodied in performer's body, but also we think about those who have lost their lives that are frozen in a form of memorial sculpture. And this is another collective work which is called We Are Still Walking. This performance is about the vulnerability, trauma, tracing, displacement, control, numbness, shock, and the violence perpetuated from war during history. This performance requires body endurance, but still aims to give an experience to the audience who are helping through this project. So they are walking among sculpture while they are holding the flower, a sense of a human life, and question the way, are this a place that we have come after all these progresses and we still have war in the world? And the last collective project that I did was called We the Women. Again, this is a collective works of all performers who are volunteer. They hold around 1 hours performance through holding power through the Black Chador. This was in sustainability and support Afghan women who got Black enforced law as Taliban came into the power. So as you can see from the photograph, women were holding the flowers, and as they're getting tired, their hands lose the ability to hold. The chador is over, their flower is up, and the traces of the chador is remaining, and their beautiful physical appearance with their beautiful color dresses are revealed. So that's the end of my presentation, and I thank every single person of this volunteer who helped through creating this works, and all of them have their names and credit along with the project when I present them in any events. But here, unfortunately, I didn't have space for the name, but they are always there on my Instagram and website when I place them. Thank you. And if you have any question, you're welcome to ask.